Chapter 1, A Ghost Ship Adrift. The morning of December 5, 1872, dawned with a quiet stillness over the vast Atlantic Ocean. The sun cast shimmering reflections on the water's surface, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of salt through the air. A British brigantine, De Gracia, sailed steadily through the waves, its crew moving about their duties as they navigated the open sea. It was then that something unusual caught the attention of the first mate, Oliver Deveau. On the horizon, a ship appeared, drifting aimlessly. Its sails were partially set, fluttering in the wind, yet it moved with an unnatural sluggishness, as if no hand was guiding it. Deveau squinted against the sunlight, trying to make sense of the sight before him. There were no signals of distress, no signs of life. It was an eerie sight, and an unspoken unease spread among the crew. Captain David Morehouse, an experienced and cautious mariner, was alerted. He studied the distant vessel through a spyglass and immediately recognized its name painted on the hull, Mary Celeste. The name alone sent a chill through him. Morehouse knew this ship well. It had departed from New York only a few weeks earlier, bound for Genoa, carrying a cargo of industrial alcohol. Its captain, Benjamin Briggs, was a respected and capable seafarer, a man Morehouse had met personally. There was no reason for Mary Celeste to be here, adrift and abandoned in the middle of the ocean. Sensing something was terribly wrong, Morehouse ordered a small boarding party to investigate. As Deveau and two other sailors rowed toward the ship, a heavy silence settled over them. The closer they got, the more unsettling the scene became. The ship appeared undamaged. There were no visible signs of attack, no broken masts or hull breaches. It was as if the Mary Celeste had simply been left to drift by its own accord. Upon reaching the deck, the men hesitated before climbing aboard. The stillness was deafening. The ship creaked softly as it rocked with the waves, but there were no voices, no hurried footsteps, nothing that indicated a living soul was present. The ship was completely deserted. Deveau called out, his voice echoing eerily across the empty deck. No reply came. The crew's belongings were still in their quarters, clothes, personal items, even valuables, untouched. The ship's cargo hold was intact, with barrels of alcohol secured just as they had been in New York. The lifeboat, however, was missing. A sense of dread grew stronger as they made their way to the captain's cabin. Inside, the scene was even more bizarre. The room was in perfect order. The captain's belongings remained neatly in place, and his logbook lay open on the desk. The last entry, dated 10 days prior, described calm seas and no indication of distress. It was as if the crew had vanished into thin air. The ship's galley contained food and water, untouched and still fresh. The dining table had been set for a meal, but no one had eaten. The beds in the crew's quarters were unmade, as if someone had left in a hurry. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no damage, just an overwhelming emptiness. The mystery deepened as Deveau examined the ship's navigation instruments. The sextant and chronometer were missing, suggesting that someone had taken them, likely in a lifeboat. But why? There was no storm reported in the area at the time. There were no signs of a pirate attack. No evidence of illness or poisoning. It was as though the crew had abandoned a fully functional ship in the middle of the ocean for no apparent reason. A creeping sense of unease settled over the boarding party as they finished their search. The Mary Celeste was not just abandoned, it felt haunted. Something unseen, something inexplicable, had forced the crew to leave. As Deveau and his men returned to De Gracia, one thought lingered in their minds: what had truly happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? Their story, lost to the sea, would never be told. Only the ship remained, drifting silently, carrying the weight of a mystery that has endured for over a century. Chapter 2, A Journey Doomed from the Start. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York Harbor, bound for Genoa, Italy. At the helm was Captain Benjamin Briggs, a seasoned mariner with years of experience navigating the world's oceans. A devout and disciplined man, Briggs was known for his strict but fair leadership. His wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, accompanied him on this voyage, a rare decision, as captains rarely brought their families on such long and unpredictable journeys. The crew of 7 men was hand-picked by Briggs himself. Each had a solid reputation and was well versed in handling a merchant vessel. Among them was Albert Richardson, the first mate, who had worked under Briggs before and was considered highly reliable. The ship's cargo, a shipment of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, was tightly secured in the hold. This type of cargo was volatile but not uncommon, and there was no immediate reason to suspect that it would pose any danger. The departure went smoothly. The ship was in excellent condition, freshly refitted and seaworthy. Weather conditions were favorable, and there were no signs of trouble ahead. Yet, before the journey even began, Captain Briggs seemed uneasy. In a letter to his mother, written just before setting sail, he mentioned that he had a foreboding feeling about the voyage. He did not elaborate on why, but his words would later fuel speculation that he had sensed something ominous waiting ahead. As the Mary Celeste moved eastward into the Atlantic, things remained calm. The ship's log entries, later recovered, showed nothing unusual for the first few weeks. The crew went about their daily routines, adjusting sails, maintaining the ship, and ensuring the cargo remained secure. Sarah Briggs, ever the devoted wife, wrote in her journal about Sophia's laughter echoing through the captain's quarters as she played with her toys. Life on board seemed ordinary. Then, something changed. The last recorded log entry was dated November 25, 1872. It placed the Mary Celeste about 400 miles east of the Azores, a group of islands in the North Atlantic. The entry noted fair weather and steady winds. There was no mention of distress, no warning of an impending crisis. Yet, just 10 days later, when the Dei Gratia discovered the ship, it was completely abandoned. What happened in those missing 10 days? Some theorists suggest the ship may have encountered a sudden storm or waterspout, causing the crew to panic and abandon ship. However, no damage to the vessel was found, and the ship's sails were still intact when it was discovered. Others speculate that alcohol fumes from the cargo hold leaked, creating an explosion risk that forced the crew to flee into the lifeboat, only to be lost at sea. Yet, there was no evidence of fire or burning. Then, there were the more chilling theories, that something unseen had lured the crew away. Some sailors believed in the supernatural, whispering of ghostly forces or a sea monster lurking beneath the waves. Others entertained the idea of mutiny, perhaps an argument had erupted between the crew and the captain, leading to an unexpected and tragic end. Whatever the truth may be, one fact remains undeniable: the Mary Celeste, a sturdy and seaworthy vessel, had been left to drift in the open ocean with no clear explanation. It was as if something, or someone, had erased the crew from existence, leaving only silence in their wake. As the ship continued its lonely journey, the questions only deepened. What force had driven them from their ship? And why had they never been seen again? Chapter 3, Vanishing Without a Trace. The vast Atlantic Ocean stretches endlessly in all directions, an unforgiving expanse of deep, uncharted waters. It is a place where sailors vanish, where stories fade into the whispers of the waves. And on that fateful voyage in 1872, something, or someone, erased the crew of the Mary Celeste from existence. When Dei Gratia's crew searched the abandoned ship, they found no signs of violence, no struggle, no blood. Yet, the ship had clearly been left in haste. The lifeboat was gone, along with the sextant and chronometer, suggesting that the crew had deliberately abandoned ship. But why? The ship's cargo hold remained intact. with all 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol accounted for. Nothing had been stolen. The crew's personal belongings, clothing, tools, and even valuables, were untouched. Food and fresh water were still in supply, enough for 6 months. There was no rational reason for an experienced captain like Benjamin Briggs to order the evacuation of a perfectly seaworthy vessel. One of the most chilling discoveries was in the captain's quarters. His logbook, the only written record of the voyage, was open on his desk. The last entry, dated November 25, 1872, was uneventful, describing fair weather and steady winds. There was nothing to indicate distress, no cryptic final words. It was as if, in the days that followed, something invisible had reached up from the depths and plucked the crew away. Theories of the vanishing. Many theories have been proposed over the years, yet none can fully explain the disappearance of the crew. Some suggest a sudden storm or waterspout, a violent force of nature that could have forced them into the lifeboat. But there were no reports of storms in the area, and the ship itself showed no storm damage. Another possibility is that the alcohol fumes from the cargo hold leaked, creating a fear of an impending explosion. Captain Briggs, believing his ship was about to be engulfed in flames, may have ordered his family and crew into the lifeboat, intending to return once the danger had passed. But if the lifeboat's tether snapped, they would have been set adrift, lost forever in the open ocean. Some theories take a darker turn. Had there been a mutiny? A conflict between the crew and the captain that led to their downfall? But if there had been violence, where was the evidence? There were no bloodstains, no overturned furniture, no signs of a struggle. The ship was eerily pristine. Then, there are the more supernatural explanations. Some sailors whispered that the Bermuda Triangle's influence stretched further than believed, that the Mary Celeste had been caught in a force beyond human understanding. Others spoke of ghostly apparitions luring the crew to their doom, or a phantom ship crossing paths with the ill-fated vessel. One of the most unnerving possibilities is that the crew simply disappeared, not by force, not by accident, but by some unseen presence that took them, leaving the ship behind as a hollow, drifting ghost. A ship left to wander. With no clear answers, the Mary Celeste was eventually sailed to Gibraltar by the Dei Gratia crew, where it became the subject of one of the most controversial maritime investigations in history. Theories, accusations, and ghost stories would follow the ship forever, but no trace of Captain Briggs, his family, or his crew was ever found. The Atlantic Ocean had swallowed them whole, leaving nothing behind but an empty ship and an unsolved mystery that endures to this day. Chapter 4, A Captain's Last Log, The Final Entries of Benjamin Briggs. The captain's log is often the most valuable piece of evidence in understanding the final moments of a doomed voyage. It is a diary of the sea, an official record of weather conditions, course changes, and daily life aboard the ship. In the case of the Mary Celeste, it became a haunting relic, one that contained no warning of disaster, no farewell words, and no explanation for why the ship had been abandoned. The final entry, dated November 25, 1872, placed the ship about 400 miles east of the Azores. The waters were calm, the wind was steady, and there was nothing to indicate trouble on the horizon. The entry was routine, detailing navigation coordinates and minor course adjustments. There was no mention of distress, no storm, no sickness among the crew, nothing that could explain what was about to happen. Yet, something changed in the days that followed. Strange omissions and unsettling details. While the captain's logs from earlier in the voyage appeared normal, investigators noted something unusual about the last few entries. Captain Briggs, a meticulous man, had suddenly stopped recording details he would normally include, like crew morale, observations about the weather beyond coordinates, and any difficulties they may have faced. The entries became colder, more mechanical, as if the ship were moving forward but something was unsettling the captain. Several theories arose from these strange emissions. The captain knew something was wrong. Some believed Briggs had sensed an impending threat but was unwilling, or unable, to write it down. Was it fear? A slow realization that something was terribly wrong? Did he suspect someone, or something, was watching them? The ship had encountered something unusual. Others suggest that the Mary Celeste may have experienced an event so bizarre that it defied logical explanation. Had they seen something in the water? Encountered an unexplained phenomenon? Could the crew have been suffering from mass hysteria? A deliberate cover-up. Another theory is that Briggs may have intentionally omitted key details to keep them from prying eyes. If something was happening aboard the ship, be it conflict, paranoia, or an unknown threat, was he leaving a cryptic clue by saying nothing at all? The missing pages. Even more chilling is the claim that some pages of the logbook were missing when the Mary Celeste was discovered. If true, this suggests that someone, perhaps the last person aboard, ripped out evidence of what truly happened. Could it have been Briggs himself? A frightened crew member? Or was there another hand involved, one that erased the final moments of the ship's voyage? The final hours. Investigators believe that whatever happened aboard the Mary Celeste must have occurred sometime between November 25 and December 4, 1872, the estimated period in which the ship was abandoned. The fact that the ship was still fully stocked with food, water, and personal belongings suggests that the crew did not plan to leave permanently. So what could have driven them into the sea? A rogue wave? The fear of an explosion? Or had they fled something unseen, something that could not be recorded in the captain's final log? As the ship drifted aimlessly across the Atlantic, its captain's voice was silenced forever. His logbook, the last testament of the once proud vessel, ended with calm words before an inexplicable disappearance. And the world would never hear from Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, or his crew again. Chapter 5, Theories and Speculations. What could have happened? Pirates, natural disasters, or something supernatural? The mystery of the Mary Celeste is one of the most chilling unsolved cases in maritime history. A ship found eerily abandoned, drifting without direction, its cargo untouched, and no sign of struggle. Theories have been spun for over 150 years. Yet none can fully explain the strange fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, and his crew. Was it a natural disaster? A pirate attack? Or something even more terrifying, an unseen force beyond human comprehension? Let us dive into the most popular, most bizarre, and most haunting theories that attempt to answer the question, what really happened aboard the Mary Celeste? 1. The pirate theory. A silent, bloodless raid? Pirates have long haunted the waters of the Atlantic and Mediterranean. But would they leave behind a valuable ship, untouched cargo, and personal belongings? This is where the pirate theory begins to fall apart. If the ship had been raided, there would have been signs of struggle, bloodstains, damage to the hull, missing valuables. Yet, when the crew of the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste, everything was in order. Even the barrels of industrial alcohol, worth a small fortune, remained intact. Some suggest that the crew may have spotted a pirate vessel approaching an abandoned ship before an attack, but why take the risk of drifting in the open sea when their ship was still seaworthy? The pirate theory, though possible, leaves too many unanswered questions. 2. A waterspout or freak wave, a sudden force of nature? The Atlantic Ocean is home to powerful waterspouts, spinning columns of air and water that can be devastating if they form close to a ship. If a massive waterspout had passed directly over the Mary Celeste, it could have drenched the ship with seawater, making it appear as if it were sinking. Knocked out the crew or scared them into an emergency evacuation. Damaged the ship's instruments, leading to confusion. Another possibility is a rogue wave, a sudden, towering wall of water that can appear seemingly out of nowhere. If the Mary Celeste was hit by one, it could have swept crew members overboard, leaving the remaining sailors to panic. Damaged the ship just enough to make the captain believe it was sinking. However, if this were the case, why did the ship show no damage? Why was the lifeboat missing, but the deck left undisturbed? Would a seasoned captain like Benjamin Briggs truly abandon his vessel so easily? Once again, there are too many holes in this theory. 3. The alcohol explosion theory, a phantom fire? This theory suggests that the crew feared an imminent explosion from the cargo. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, a highly volatile substance. Some believe that alcohol vapors leaked from the barrels, creating a toxic and explosive atmosphere below deck. The crew may have noticed a strange smell, dizziness, or even hallucinations, leading to panic. A small explosion or sudden flash of fire, a cold fire that leaves no visible marks, could have scared them into abandoning ship. Supporting this idea is the fact that 9 barrels of alcohol were later found empty. Had they leaked? Had the crew feared the worst and evacuated, only to be lost at sea? Still, this theory has its flaws. Why were all personal belongings left behind? Would an experienced captain not have tested the air before abandoning ship? A terrifying idea, but not a complete answer. 4. Mutiny. Did the crew turn against their captain? Captain Benjamin Briggs was known as a strict but fair leader. However, some have speculated that tensions aboard the Mary Celeste may have reached a breaking point. Could the crew have turned against him? Perhaps the long voyage and monotony of the sea drove someone to madness. Maybe a disagreement over rations or alcohol sparked a deadly conflict. The crew could have forced the captain and his family onto the lifeboat, leaving them to drift helplessly. But once again, the lack of signs of struggle works against this theory. Why was the ship left in such perfect order? Why were the cargo and valuables untouched? If a mutiny occurred, it was the strangest and cleanest in history. 5. The supernatural theories, something beyond our understanding? Some mysteries are too strange to be explained by logic. Over the years, supernatural theories have emerged, attempting to answer the unanswerable. Ghost ship, a curse on the Mary Celeste? Sailors are a superstitious group, and some believe the Mary Celeste was cursed from the beginning. After all, it was originally named the Amazon, but had a series of misfortunes before being renamed. Did the renaming of the ship anger some unseen force? Was it destined to be a ship that no one would ever return from? Sea creatures, dragged into the depths? Could a massive sea creature, something hidden in the unexplored depths of the Atlantic, have been? Chapter 6, The Cursed Cargo? Delige tovar alcohol malclu nuolagu? The air inside the hold of the Mary Celeste was thick with the faint, acrid scent of alcohol. Though the barrels were sealed, a strange unease surrounded them, as if they held a secret waiting to be uncovered. When the crew of the Dei Gratia inspected the cargo, they found something unexpected. 9 barrels were empty. But there was no sign of leakage, no spillage staining the wooden planks. It was as though the alcohol had simply vanished, leaving behind only an unanswered question. Was it possible that the cargo itself was the reason for the ship's eerie abandonment? Could the industrial alcohol, meant for sale in Genoa, have played a more sinister role in the fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs and his crew? The mystery of the missing barrels cast a shadow over the ship's history. Unlike drinking spirits, industrial alcohol was highly volatile, flammable, and toxic. A single spark could have turned the Mary Celeste into a floating inferno. Yet, there were no scorch marks, no signs of fire, only the unsettling emptiness where the crew should have been. As the boarding party moved carefully through the hold, the dim light flickered against the rows of barrels. Each one was heavy, filled with liquid that sloshed softly with the movement of the ship. But the missing alcohol wasn't the only troubling detail. The air felt strange, charged with something invisible. Some sailors believed that ships carried their own spirits, and in that moment, the Mary Celeste felt undeniably wrong. A theory began to take shape, one both logical and terrifying. Had the crew been overcome by fumes from the cargo? If the barrels had been leaking, invisible vapors could have spread throughout the ship. Industrial alcohol, unlike rum or whiskey, was not meant for consumption. Even a brief exposure to high concentrations of fumes could cause dizziness, nausea, and confusion. In a confined space, it could become deadly. Perhaps one of the crew members, noticing the odor, panicked, warning the others that an explosion was imminent. A stray spark from the galley, a lantern knocked over, or even a careless pipe could ignite the vapors, setting the entire ship ablaze. Fear spread quickly. Captain Briggs, ever the cautious leader, may have ordered an emergency evacuation, believing that the Mary Celeste was seconds away from becoming a fireball in the middle of the Atlantic. In their haste, they lowered the lifeboat, taking only the navigation instruments and essential supplies. The ship itself was still seaworthy, but in the panic of the moment, it must have seemed like a death trap. Perhaps they tethered the lifeboat to the ship, planning to return once the danger had passed. But the ocean is an unforgiving master. If a sudden gale had struck, or if the rope had frayed and snapped, the crew would have been left helpless, drifting farther and farther from their abandoned ship. No food, no water, no way to navigate, just an endless horizon of cruel waves, swallowing them whole. And yet, something still didn't sit right. If they had feared an explosion, why was the ship found in perfect condition? Would an experienced captain like Briggs have truly risked leaving his vessel unless he was absolutely certain it was doomed? There were whispers among sailors that some ships were cursed from the moment they touched water. The Mary Celeste had already suffered an ill-fated past under her original name, Amazon. She had run aground, suffered damage, and been sold off like an unwanted relic. Was it possible that something darker lingered within her timbers? The sea had a way of swallowing the truth. No bodies were ever found. No wreckage from a lifeboat ever washed ashore. The crew of the Mary Celeste had vanished into the depths of history, leaving behind nothing but speculation. The only certainty was this: when the day Gracia found her, she was still sailing, still moving forward. Alone. Chapter 7, The Phantom of the Mary Celeste. The story of the Mary Celeste did not end with the discovery of her abandoned hull. No, it was merely the beginning of an even more mysterious chapter, one that would haunt the ocean's depths and the hearts of sailors for years to come. What began as a strange and inexplicable disappearance soon turned into a tale of a ghost ship, a cursed vessel that seemed destined to sail the seas for eternity, forever pursued by whispers of the supernatural. In the months and years that followed the ship's abandonment, more than a handful of reports began to surface, detailing eerie sightings of a familiar ship. The Mary Celeste had disappeared from the world's maps, but she had not disappeared from the memories of sailors who still navigated the Atlantic. Strange, unexplained encounters with a ship that resembled the infamous brigantine started to emerge, and these reports were chilling. One of the earliest reports came just a year after the Mary Celeste was found abandoned. A British ship, sailing the waters near the Azores, came across a ship moving in the distance. At first, the crew thought it was a friendly vessel in need of assistance. But as they drew closer, they saw something that made their hearts race. The ship's sails were tattered and faded, the wood was weathered beyond repair, but it was unmistakably the Mary Celeste. The crew of the British ship called out, but there was no response. They tried to signal, but the ship did not alter its course. It sailed on as if it were a ghost of the past, drifting on the waves without a soul aboard. The eerie encounter left the crew of the British ship shaken, and the report sparked further rumors. Was the Mary Celeste truly lost? Had she been cursed by the sea, destined to drift forever, carrying with her the spirits of the lost crew who had vanished on that fateful night? For some sailors, the answer seemed clear: the ship was haunted. The idea of a phantom ship, appearing in the most unexpected places, took hold of the maritime community. As the years went by, more reports came in, and each one was more unsettling than the last. Sailors claimed to have seen the Mary Celeste appear suddenly in the distance, only to disappear moments later, as if swallowed by the sea. Some ships that sailed in the same waters reported hearing strange sounds, the faint echoes of voices carried on the wind, whispers of the ship's tragic past. In some cases, crews would speak of seeing faint, flickering lights aboard the ship, though the Mary Celeste had long since been abandoned. No one could explain it, but the connection between the ship's eerie disappearance and the sightings of her ghostly form was too persistent to ignore. One particularly chilling tale came from a ship sailing off the coast of the Azores in 1879. The crew reported seeing the Mary Celeste in the distance, drifting silently under a darkening sky. As they neared, they saw a shadowy figure standing on the deck, staring out across the horizon. When they called out, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the ship, seemingly abandoned once again. The crew of the ship was too terrified to approach any closer, and they quickly sailed away, convinced they had encountered something unnatural, something that could not be explained by mere earthly means. But perhaps the most famous of these ghostly sightings came in 1885, when a Norwegian ship claimed to have come across the Mary Celeste once more, this time just off the coast of Sierra Leone. The ship was drifting, just as it had been when first discovered. But this time, something was different. The sailors swore they saw figures moving aboard the deck, figures that were vaporous and indistinct, as though they were mere shadows, not real people. And when the Norwegian ship attempted to approach, the Mary Celeste again vanished, slipping into the mist like a specter of the sea. The sightings of the ghost ship became so frequent that many mariners began to believe in the curse of the Mary Celeste. They spoke in hushed tones of the spirit of the crew, trapped aboard the ship, doomed to wander the oceans forever. To see the Mary Celeste was considered an ill omen, a warning of impending doom. Some sailors even claimed that seeing the ship foretold their own death, and several ships that encountered her ghostly form later met tragic fates. For some, the idea of a haunted ship was a comforting explanation for the mysterious events surrounding the Mary Celeste. It was easier to believe that the ship had been cursed, its crew condemned to sail for eternity, than to accept the terrifying truth that the ship had been abandoned for reasons still unknown, and that the sea had swallowed up her secrets without a trace. Perhaps, in some strange way, the Mary Celeste had become a symbol of unanswered questions, a reminder that the ocean held mysteries that no one could ever fully understand. Even today, the Mary Celeste remains one of the most. Chapter 8, The Final Voyage, What Happened to the Crew? As the years passed, the mystery of the Mary Celeste grew deeper. The ship's eerie disappearance, the sightings of her ghostly form, and the speculation surrounding her cargo all fueled the legend. But one question still lingered, unanswered and unsettling: what happened to the crew? Theories about the fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, and their young daughter, along with the rest of the crew, abounded. Some believed the most logical explanation was that the crew had been overcome by a sudden calamity, perhaps a violent storm or a seaquake, something so unexpected and destructive that it left the ship abandoned without a trace. However, no such event was recorded in the ship's log or by other vessels in the area. No storm, no signs of shipwreck or damage. The Mary Celeste had been found in pristine condition, yet her crew was gone without a single clue as to why or how. Others speculated that the cargo itself had played a key role. The industrial alcohol carried on board could have been responsible for creating a toxic atmosphere, overwhelming the crew and causing them to panic and flee. But again, there were no signs of illness or poisoning. and no one had been left behind to tell the tale. The most chilling possibility that has haunted historians and ghost hunters alike is the idea that the Mary Celeste's crew had been taken by something beyond human comprehension. Many whispered of supernatural forces at play, forces that, for reasons unknown, had claimed the lives of the crew. Was there a curse upon the ship, a wrathful spirit lurking below decks, or a malevolent presence that had driven them mad? Some sailors claimed to have seen strange lights flickering aboard the ship after it was abandoned, and even those who encountered the ship later spoke of a heavy, oppressive feeling, as though the crew had been taken by an unknown force. Despite the mounting intrigue and speculation, the truth of what happened to the crew remains elusive. They vanished without a trace, and for more than a century, the mystery of the Mary Celeste remained one of the greatest unsolved riddles of the sea. Though many theories have been proposed, none have provided a definitive answer. Perhaps, in the end, that is what makes the Mary Celeste so haunting, a story of disappearance without resolution, a ghost ship that will never give up its secrets. The final voyage of the Mary Celeste remains a ghostly puzzle, locked in time, adrift on the restless waves of the ocean, waiting for answers that may never come.